Welcome to the Founders Desk, where we unpack real conversations about business, brand, growth, and today, performance analytics. I'm Tami Ruschin, and today I'm here with Ryan Sauer from Redwood Analytics. Thank you for joining us today, Ryan.
Thank you for having me.
How are you feeling?
Excited, nervous.
Yes. We've got a lot to discuss today.
A lot to discuss, and it's a very meaty topic. So
it really is. I'm excited for you guys. Ryan, tell us a little bit about Redwood Analytics and what you do, even a little bit about your background. Let's just get an understanding of where this conversation is going to go today.
Okay, great. So I started an agency in 2009. Back in the early days of digital marketing, really.
Yes.
And we were a full service digital agency, as we called ourselves, and we did everything under the sun: social media, email marketing, SEO, ads, all the good things. And after a couple of years of running that, I joined the King James Group. I was partially acquired into King James, and I headed up digital media and part of the digital team there. And we grew the business with King James over a few years, and that business was then acquired by Accenture. In that process, working with such a phenomenal creative agency, I was obsessed with the concept of measurement and what truly is or isn't measurable in marketing, and understanding where those things started and ended. And in the process, I realized that marketing analytics is quite underserved.
Very much so.
Yeah, it feels to me like it's a part of a retainer. It's part of what's expected by incumbent agency or certain specialists, and it doesn't sit as its own speciality. So that was the birth of Redwood Analytics. Is going, what happens if you have a business that's a pure marketing analytics service, and how do we build that? And so our obsession is helping chief marketing officers and agencies better plan and then measure the impact of their effort.
And that is the sole service of Redwood Analytics.
That's all we do. We're not a media agency.
You eat, breathe, sleep,
We're not creative. We're not creative. We're not SEO. We're not media buyers. We're not strategists. We are purely measurement and data. We call ourselves data democratization specialists.
Oh, that's a hectic word.
We just want to make sure that people have access to information so they can make decisions. And it shouldn't sit with one person. It should sit across agency and organization.
And we talk about the marketing matrix and the entire process of where strategy sits and execution and reporting, but where do you come in from a brand perspective, because brands view it as, okay, well, that's the end of the process, the reporting side.
It's a fantastic question. I think that data and analytics or analysis lives throughout the process. So data informs strategy. Strategy obviously informs a plan that gets executed. But during planning and execution, there is data that is for management, not reporting. And then there's reporting, which is the outcome. That is then the feedback loop back into strategy. So it is cyclical.
Yes.
And it's across the whole life cycle.
Okay, so there's data for management and the insights that inform the strategy.
Yeah.
And then the reporting
it
is
should
the
be
outcome.
Infused.
Absolutely. And what sort of insights would you provide from the beginning of the process?
So insights for us, we see data. People talk about the word data.
Yes.
Data by itself is actually quite useless. It's a single metric or a single touch point. So if I say 60, it means nothing.
Yeah.
If I say 60 brand advocates, you now have a metric of what 60 looks like. And if I say, and that is a decrease of 50% from last month, you now have a comparative metric.
Got you.
And you go, but that's also because we weren't running a particular campaign. You now have context. So insights for us only make sense if you've linked the data to other factors around you. And those insights have to cause action. An insight is a so what.
That is so key. Exactly. The insights have to cause action. But now, in 2026, marketing has more data than ever. So why are brands and businesses still struggling to prove the real business impact? Is it marketing that's broken, or is the way we measure it that is broken? Or is none of it broken?
Or is nothing broken? Is everything fine? So I believe one of the challenges we have is marketers as a skill set spend all their effort and attention on the brand, positioning the brand.
Yes.
But they don't spend enough effort and attention in positioning marketing in the organization. That's another whole layer of framing.
So is that a whole other discussion and podcast?
Well, I think it's part of this conversation really, because if CMOs and marketers are not positioning their intention to the business, then when you get to reporting and outcomes, it's, well, is this what we intended to do? Is this just an unintended consequence that we're pleased with? Or is this what we intended to do, and did we win or fail?
It's so interesting that, because at Style ID we see it so often, and what we implement is what we call the pre-campaign KPIs, right?
Yes.
Because it's all good and well doing the execution from the creator campaigns and providing the reports at the end of the campaign, but what are we measuring against? And that is where we find it so difficult with our clients, because they need to understand what we need to measure against. So yeah, it's very interesting.
I'm seeing that. What's happening is that you have initiatives and you have effort, but it's not linked to a goal. And so the goal and the outcome is always like, oh, did we achieve it? Achieve what? Oh, we did all the work, but what did we get?
So where's the disconnect in organizations or brands or businesses?
I think the disconnect is in the chief marketing officer actually owning the objectives rather than asking their specialist partners or their agencies to set them. So I believe that that the requirement is for the chief marketing officers to say, or the brand manager, or whatever, that just interchange the word CMO with whatever is in the organization. But your key role in that role is to ensure that you understand business requirements and deeply drive your partners' efforts to those objectives.
To achieve them.
Not to ask your agency partners, whether it's in content creation, influencer, media buying, creative execution, not to ask them to tell you what you're going to achieve.
And that is so key, because we get asked a lot, what are the objectives that we want to achieve? But what are examples of metrics that look good but actually mean very little? And I know it would vary across media, creator, whatnot, but can you give us some examples that you find that brands and businesses are measuring that they shouldn't, not that they shouldn't, but it means very little?
So, if I had to point at one or two in particular, I think we speak about reach a lot.
Yes.
And we speak about impressions and the intention of seeing, and I think both those metrics are deeply flawed and are going to disappear. And they're going to disappear for a couple of reasons. Number one, because you have such fragmented channels, reach is really difficult, and the channels do not overlap. So I think reach is difficult these days. And impressions, with living in the world of AI and programmatic bots and all types of things, even on social and other channels, I don't believe that impressions are a metric of anything material these days.
Wow.
There are far deeper metrics that businesses should focus on, ones that are of proper engagement, intent, action, brand res. We'll talk about those later, but they're metrics that I think do matter.
And just to finish off on that particular point, would that then at the beginning of the process then connect to, well, are we measuring awareness? Are we measuring conversion or even consideration before that? So, because surely from an awareness point of view, is reach and impressions still not awareness?
I think when we talk, we'll get to it just now in terms of a framework. Maybe towards the end, I want to leave the viewers of this with something tangible to act on.
Fantastic.
And I will absolutely talk about what that looks like and how to decide what it looks like in reporting to decide what it looks like in planning.
Fantastic. I look forward to that. We are going to take a short break and we will be back soon. We're back on the Founders Desk with Ryan Sauer from Redwood Analytics, and we are talking all things performance marketing today. So, Ryan, I'm loving our conversation, and it is so important because us as an agency, we see the gaps in terms of data, insights, reporting, but tell us a bit about how has performance marketing reshaped and or distorted the way brands think about ROI?
Yeah, return on investment. Interchangeable and different to return on marketing investment.
Okay.
Interchangeable and different to return on ad spend.
Wow.
Interchangeable and so on and so forth.
Got you.
But
you see where this is going,
ROI,
guys.
we love a good acronym, and we love to then hide behind it we gloss over it in a report. We go, and the ROI was, and like ROI of what? How was it calculated? What was the methodology? I guess the bottom line of performance marketing, which is now a catchphrase in itself.
Yes.
Performance marketing means any marketing or spend that resulted in a definitive outcome that was trackable and attributable. We call that performance marketing. But in essence, the concept of marketing driving performance is one of its functions. Mm-hmm. And not all of that is as linear as attributable and measurable. So how is it impacting marketing? My answer is badly. Because what we've ultimately done is when a marketing manager or a CMO goes with a plan to a board or a director or a manager in a business, they're now going, what's this going to return?
Yes.
And I think the challenge we have is that marketing managers aren't feeling comfortable or brave enough saying, some of this I know how it's going to be measured, and other parts, number one, will take time, and I'm not entirely sure how we're going to attribute it directly. And that's not a comfortable space to be in when you're
Absolutely.
asking for money.
Well, I'm going to send this episode to all the clients. Explain this, because that is so key.
And again, when we get to the end, you better listen to the end, because when we get to our framework, it's going to better help marketers and brand managers understand how to compartmentalize these things to set the right expectation for the right outcome, where not everything is performance marketing. And I guess I'd also like to talk about correlation and causation.
Big words, tell us.
So in marketing, we want a lot of our marketing spend to ultimately be correlated.
Yes.
Correlated means if I spend R1 on something, you can unequivocally confirm and correlate that it resulted in performance. So one of the challenges we have with CEOs is that they want correlation of marketing spend to business performance.
Yes.
Whereas I believe that we're more in a world of causation with marketing. So in performance marketing, correlation is normally straight up is I'm trying to generate leads or test drives for a car, and I'm going to do certain activities that are going to result in test drives or car sales. That's often correlation, and that's performance marketing.
Yes.
Whereas I feel the stuff around maybe influencer content creation and social is much more causal. So brand advocacy, brand resonance, some of those things, I believe, are not going to be things you can correlate to a sale, but they're definitely causal.
It's so important, and we try to explain that right from the beginning in terms of the difference. We've just had an interesting example with a client lately, but I'll get into that because my question now is, has short-term thinking overtaken long-term brand building? And just in terms of the example I was going to explain is that we were running a conversion campaign, right? It's 6-month campaign, but within the first month, the client said it didn't reach what it, the KPIs and the intended conversions that it needed to reach. And now we have to rethink the whole structure. But now, is that very much short-term thinking because we are only in the first month and we still have long-term brand building as well as the rest of the campaign to run through? So let's go back to, has short-term thinking overtaken long-term brand building?
Absolutely. I think it's Mark Ritson, who's obviously a great resource and kind of theoretical and pedigreed educator in marketing. His biggest concern is that we have become overly indexed in short-term bursts And this is the whole System 1 or the long and short of it, which I think it's called The Long and Short of It, by Les Binet and Peter Field. And they're talking about the fact that we are doing way too much campaign-driven exercises without enough brand building. And that brand building, number one, takes time, but the impact of it is much longer.
Absolutely.
Versus burst campaigns that we think you incrementally stack on top of each other. They have separate objectives, they have separate intent, they have separate messaging, and you can't expect campaigns to incrementally stack to outcome.
I've been preaching this for I don't know how long, so thank you for emphasizing that. But on that point, what are brands potentially sacrificing if they're focusing on the short-term bursts?
Everything. So my challenge is that, okay, let's just talk about content creation influencer for a second. The way people discover influencers that they resonate with is not a linear process.
Absolutely.
And the content engagement is often retrospective. So I will discover a video of someone today, but then engage with previous content that is maybe evergreen and exists retrospectively for the next 3 months.
Absolutely.
And so both the life value of that content and the discoverability of that content and the resonance of that content is not campaign driven. The campaign runs from May to June. I discover this content in October.
Absolutely.
Where's the halo effect? Where's the value? How's that being passed back? And I mean, we must talk about what metrics look like in this space. But brands that invest in brand, and I believe that content creation and influencer is brand because it's not performance.
Yes.
So let's be very clear. I don't believe that most social, unless you're doing lead gen meta ads, I don't believe most social is performance. And so we have to understand that and accept it and be comfortable with it, but then decide what is it there to measure. If not performance, that's fine. Let's be honest about that.
So where do most brands get attribution wrong today?
Okay, very simply, they don't have an attribution model. So they haven't defined a model. There's different models. There's linear, where you give weighting to everything in the marketing life cycle. There's first engagement, where you upweight the first thing that people did. There's last engagement, where you upweight the last thing people did. There's all different types of models here.
So are they over-crediting the last click?
That's the default, but it's not even conscious and it's not even in the model. It's just what they call performance marketing. Performance marketing is last click.
Yes.
You go, I can measure that this Google search ad resulted in a test drive, therefore Google search ads work.
Yes.
So that's last click attribution and it's linear. Whereas I believe that we should, first of all, you should understand the different models that exist for different brands and businesses. And then you need to decide to potentially run more than one simultaneously. So you can see what it looks like on one model versus another. Interesting.
Very, very interesting. But now, would that go back to the question of what's the biggest misconception that CMOs, CEOs, CFOs have about marketing measurement? Because now there's all these different types of models and it goes back to, is there a misconception?
Absolutely. I believe that in the CEO and the C-suite roles, CFO and CEO, Chief Financial, let's get away from acronyms first, Chief Financial Officer and Chief Executive Officer and Chief Operations Officer, there's often an expectation that the effort that we've put in and the money we've invested needs to have a correlatory return.
Yes.
And it needs to be within a time frame that C-suite executive is comfortable with.
Yes.
And so we have to realign that expectation that, first of all, it's not as correlatory as you would like or correlated as you would like. And it is more, the time frame is much longer than expected.
So how would you advise agencies such as Style ID to then go and explain that to the C-suites? Because obviously we, would deal with the CMOs, but then they have to go and re-explain that to the rest of the C-suite.
They need to be empowered with, so a big thing I'm seeing in general is frameworks. Now, frameworks aren't new structures. It's putting existing content into a structure. And so empowering your clients or CMOs with frameworks that they can then set as operating models or ways of taking that back to business, I believe, number one, sets expectation that I have a plan.
Yes.
And that plan isn't focused on one outcome, it's focused on multiple. And I want to tell you what we intend to achieve over this timeline, not your expected timeline.
Okay.
This is the actual timeline.
Okay.
And so in doing so, we are going to set expectation clearly at C-suite level. They need that framework, because without that framework, the lack of trust and the lack of proof in marketing to other C-suite executives is that they're going, I didn't set the expectation and then achieve or miss it. I said we were going to do a bunch of things. The expectation in the mind of the management was different. And so the outcome was most of the time not a hit or miss. It was a miss.
Yes, it was a miss. But then are businesses too focused on the dashboards and what these dashboards provide us and not enough focus on the actual business outcome?
You've got me on a topic I love. I love dashboards.
Let's talk about dashboards.
Dashboards are seen as an outcome, and they shouldn't be. They should be seen as a management tool. So dashboards aren't reports. Dashboards are used to understand something at a moment in time, and do something about it in that moment. They ask questions, they don't answer them. So businesses go, we have a dashboard, therefore we know what we're doing.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I think we're more in a world where we're not reports and insight and action heavy. We're dashboard and that's the outcome.
Got you.
So dashboards are a useful tool, but they're not an outcome. Businesses that have static reports that look at information and make insights and actions as a next step will be more valuable than just a dashboard as itself.
Wow, we can talk for ages on the dashboards.
Love dashboards.
We are going to take a very quick break and we will be back soon. We're back on the founder's desk with Ryan Sauer from Redwood Analytics, and I'm absolutely loving the conversation today because it is just so important. We are talking everything, I might not use the right words, Ryan, but everything performance marketing, KPIs, data analytics. And one of the things in my world is we speak on cultural relevance, especially when it comes to creators. And I think what is so key, what we're going to discuss now, is how should brands rethink KPIs if they want to measure long-term cultural relevance and trust. So we've got the cultural relevance, and now we've got how do we measure that?
For me, there's always a structure.
Okay.
Not always an answer, there's a structure to everything. So in Redwood, we have a deep belief in definitions and what we call taxonomy. So what we find is that clients or businesses don't spend enough time defining terms. And so I guess the first thing is to define culture. While everyone goes, oh no, culture is, it's not a word, it's not unfamiliar.
People use it loosely.
People use it loosely. So
yes.
Like if you define culture as a set of shared beliefs or behaviors and symbols that
yes.
people can gather around and defines who's in the group, who's out the group, and what's meaningful to you. If you define culture first, and you actually write that down somewhere, so that whenever someone goes, we're talking about culture, what is the definition of culture again in the relevance to style ID?
The context, yes.
So first to define naming of certain metrics or parameters is critical. So now you've defined culture, right? And then to define what moves culture. So, for example, it could be resonance or it could be relevance. Resonance is emotional. Relevance is structural.
Got you.
So to go like, so if you go like, I now understand that there's the naming and there's the key things underlying it, resonance and relevance. Then the question is, what actual metrics move that? So is it affinity? Is it advocacy? And advocacy can be two things, defending a brand or recommending a brand.
Absolutely, yes.
And I think in your world, people think about this quite a lot in terms of what those things. Currency, if I'm in that brand, do I feel a sense of currency? Do I get currency by using the brand? And longevity. I think that if you take a brand like Prime Energy Drinks versus Nando's, the longevity of the currency of those brands was vastly different.
Absolutely.
And again, I believe that influencer and content creators and businesses like Style ID work in metrics and KPIs like longevity, relevance, advocacy. And some of those elements are not always as tangible, but in some cases they are.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about what KPIs look like when someone does a brand, a culture engagement. I don't know what the words you guys use are.
Cultural engagement campaign.
A cultural engagement campaign, whatever that means. But they're KPIs that are measurable in the business. So, for example, if you can increase engagement to conversion, often these things come down to trust. So we talk about businesses go like, how can I get people to trust my brand? Well, you can get them to trust that by having resonance and advocacy and brand being culturally relevant, right? Get it. So trust can be measured in marketing. It can be measured by engagement to conversion to repurchase, referral or advocacy. Those are metrics and KPIs that are measurable. And I think some brands that have done it very well. Let's just take Pineapple Insurance.
Yeah.
Now, that's a brand that is culturally relevant,
Absolutely.
has deeply built trust with the millennial base. And so when the one thing I can imagine there's a metric for them, and if it's not, it should be, is speed of engagement to conversion and value of insurance cover. Because if you trust the brand, when you engage it, you convert faster.
In Style ID world, it would obviously mean, as we spoke about earlier, not focusing on the campaign bursts, right? It would mean focusing more on evergreen, always on is the word, type of creators, so that it is easier and you get better reporting or insights from a cultural and trust perspective. Because would you be able to measure cultural relevance for a short-term burst campaign? Well, I'm assuming no.
I'm assuming no, and yes, I agree with you. So I believe that brands think in campaigns, and they think in calendars, they think in campaigns, they think in business need executed into some type of effort or burst. And then they go, what channels do we need to execute against this? And we need social, we need media, we need influencer, we need content, we need SEO, we need emailers. And that's the way they think. They think in channel, and then they think in burst. And exactly to your point, some channels, and then I think one of the challenges we have with evergreen versus always on is that those are two words that get overly mixed.
Well, evergreen being always on. So it's the consistent. Do you?
I think the concept of always on means that you have a consistent plan over a period of time.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be a year. Everyone goes, always on is
12 months, exactly.
Yeah. For me, when I say the word, and this is, again, it goes down to taxonomy. For me, when I say the word evergreen, I mean that content lives beyond the moment in which it was produced.
Yes.
That it is part of an always on approach.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have to run content creation, amplification, and engagement always on against content that is evergreen in nature to be engaged.
Let's write that
always on.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. So would you say you've answered how do you measure trust, which increases the currency of modern brands?
Yes. I believe it's part of the cultural conversation.
Yeah.
Defining culture, understanding what's emotional versus resonance versus relevance.
Yes.
And then understanding how you are going to measure subcomponents of that against advocacy, engagement, and other factors.
Okay.
There are other metrics that fall and sub-metrics that will rally up and add up to what resonance and relevance looks like against trust and culture.
And would you say brands are sitting on valuable data that they simply don't know how to use?
Yeah, this is a whole nother podcast as well. But the answer is yes. So the challenge that I see in organizations and more big corporates, but also small business as well, is the challenge we're seeing is that they have a business intelligence team. A lot of like whether you're an insurer or you always have a business intelligence division. But the analogy I give is you wouldn't go to a GP to get a filling done. You'd go to an orthodontist or a dentist.
Yeah.
And so why are we going to a business intelligence team that has no marketing background, no marketing pedigree, and doesn't really understand marketing's intent and agenda to do the reporting of business intelligence as just a business function? So businesses are sitting on very powerful marketing data that they're either executing through non-specialist teams, or what you're not hearing people say is, I have a marketing data analyst, or I have a marketing analyst division. And agencies don't have it either.
Yeah.
So who is doing really intelligent in reporting? Whose job is it? Is it inside the organization? Well, they didn't plan it. Is it inside the agency? Well, the challenge with agencies, you're not incentivizing them that way. You're incentivizing them on retainer fees and hours.
Exactly. And
so who's doing reporting? Who's doing insights?
So if these organizations have intelligence teams or departments or business units, do you feel there's a disconnect between those business units and the marketing?
1,000%. They're either coldly analyzing the data on metrics and methods they don't fully understand and have been put in place just by function of business intelligence. And they're not owned by marketing, they're owned by the business. So you need something constructed, owned, and managed by marketing.
Absolutely. Wow, this has been such a brilliant conversation, Ryan, and so many key takeouts that I feel I could go on for days discussing this with you, because it's really so relevant to us on a day-to-day basis. But I think the one of the last things I would like to ask you is, and what you would like to leave our audience with, is if you had to redesign marketing measurement from scratch, what would you prioritize first? Are we going back to the frameworks discussion?
I'm going to speak to the camera for this one.
Yes. So if you had to redesign marketing measurement from scratch,
what would I do?
What would you prioritize first?
So a big thing we're talking about is something called objective-based marketing, OBM, which leads to something called objective-based reporting, OBR. Objective-based marketing is planning your marketing by its intended objective and not by its channel. What does that mean? You don't plan marketing by Meta, TikTok, Google Ads, email, SEO. You plan marketing by awareness, engagement, consideration, conversion. And then you put the channels, and sometimes channels can fall in more than one objective. Meta can be awareness and leads.
Yes.
Influencer can be engagement and performance in some cases.
Correct.
But you've got to know where parts of it are expected to hit one objective versus another and not bucket them into one. So media agencies are guilty of running channel-based strategies and spend strategies and not objective-based strategies. This is why it has to be owned by the marketing manager. So objective-based marketing means you structure the data, you structure your plan by the objectives you intend, and you break it up by percentages. I'm going to spend 50% in awareness, 40% in awareness. I'm going to spend 20% in engagement, and I'm going to spend the remainder in performance. But to know that up front means you can also manage the expectations in reporting. Awareness is intended to drive awareness and not performance.
Absolutely.
And so you measure it by its intention, not by its channel. And what marketers are doing is they're throwing out entire channels because they don't meet the wrong objectives outcomes. So you go, influencer doesn't work because I didn't get sales.
Exactly.
It wasn't supposed to get you sales.
Can you say that again? Louder for the people at the back.
It's supposed to drive brand relevance, brand recognition, brand recall, brand advocacy. It's not supposed to drive sales. But one day when I go down the road and I buy the car because it's in my brand recall and I want that vehicle, it will be part of your objectives, but it was higher up in the funnel. So the structure is objective-based marketing, objective-based reporting. If you plan your marketing by objectives owned by the chief marketing officer, informed to your agency partners, your reporting structures will come out much clearer, and the rest of the management team will feel like what you planned to do, you achieved because you reframed the structure of how it was supposed to be done.
Wow. That is outstanding. And Ryan, this has been such a valuable episode and session, and I hope our audience feels the same. So like, engage, subscribe, please. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today on the Founders Desk.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you all again soon.